right. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. This meeting of the Lake Oswego City Council is now called to order. Ms. Linder, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Buck.
Here.
Councilor Wenlow is joining via Zoom. Councilor Verdick. Here. Mbu.
Here.
Raff.
Here.
Corrigan. Here. And Councilor Afghan's on Zoom as well.
Thank you so much. Now, everyone, will you please stand, remove your hats, and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Okay, first item on our agenda is public comment. If anyone is here to provide public comment, if anyone has it, okay, is anyone here? Public comment? Public comment? Ma'am in the back? Public comment? Come on down. You're the only one. You made it just in time. We're glad you're here. Here, hand Miss Linder your blue.
Hi, I have a horrible memory.
Oh, please just sit in either chair. And you'll have 3 minutes to make yourself comfortable. And when you sit down, just introduce yourself.
That. Thank you.
I told her to take her time.
Do I need this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. Please speak into the microphone.
Right then.
And just let us know your name and.
My name is Linda American, and I live in Lake Oswego. I have lived here for 25 years. And I've never been to City Hall except for a passport.
Most common reason.
So would you like me to?
Yes, please. Okay. Whatever you.
I live in a very nice, quiet neighborhood. I have a neighbor who does not care for his home. No one lives in the home. The home is owned by he and his ex-wife, and I don't care, but they have several large dead trees in the backyard. And I've begged them for years to do something. I finally hired an arborist to do a certified report, telling me if I was in danger of harm or my home, which I am. The report came back that the trees are a hazard and could cause damage to me. Now, we had a death in the neighborhood last year when a tree fell on a man's house and he died. And obviously, trees are very important here. Portland, the city of Portland has an ordinance that requires homeowners to remove dead trees if they are a hazard, if they cause an issue. Lake Oswego does not. I know the code is being updated, and so my reason for being here is to see if perhaps that could be considered to include in the code a requirement that if a tree is deemed, hazardous on someone's property, that they take steps to remove it. I've hired a lawyer. We've written him a letter. This gentleman ignores me. I've even paid an arborist over time with his permission to trim like the ivy around his trees to keep them from dying. But I take care of my property. I should not have to take care of the neighbors. Our CC&Rs have nothing that gives us any teeth to do anything. So I've called the city over the years. I've talked to a gentleman named Bill Youngblood for years. So I've gotten nowhere. And so I'm at a point now where I wanted to come to the city, and gratefully I'm here today to talk to you and ask for the city's help, because I just can't keep doing this by myself. Do I want to get into protracted litigation with this man? I think that would be problematic in many ways, because the gentleman, I think, would do better working with the city than me. So that is why I'm here. I don't know if I imagine other people have this problem as well. I can't be the only one in the city who lives in fear every time I look out the window of, oh my God, is that tree going to kill me? So, I've told my daughters, God forbid something happens, this is what you do. And that's why I'm here.
Your comments are very timely. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Sorry for what you're going through with the neighbor.
I appreciate that. So if it's something that can be considered and dealt with, I would very much appreciate it.
We're glad
so
you came
shall
in.
I just go listen to the rest? Or?
Yes.
Thank you.
Like. Yes, of course.
I'm glad I made it in time.
Thank you. Yeah, just in time. I'm glad you're here. So anyone else about public comment? Okay. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. Tonight on the consent agenda. Do I have to read through all this stuff? No. Is there a motion to adopt the consent? We have a lot of things on the consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Did our two Zoomers, okay, motion passes 7-0. All right. And then we have, for Councilors only, Resolution 2448. This is making an appointment of an alternate to the 50-plus advisory board. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 24-48?
Move to adopt Resolution 24-48.
Second.
All right, all those, motion made by Councilor Verdick, seconded by Councilor Raff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, to the two. Okay, motion passes 6-0 with the mayor abstaining. All right, and now, next item on the agenda, item 8.8. This is a public hearing on Ordinance 2953, an ordinance of the city amending the comprehensive plan, community health and public safety, public facilities and services for wastewater collection and treatment section, and policies 8 and 10 regarding a new wastewater treatment facility. This is also Resolution 24-30, resolution of the council adopting an amendment to the wastewater master plan and amending the system development charge improvement plan to include the future wastewater treatment facility. We will start the hearing with a review of the hearing procedure by Ms. Osnek.
Thank you, Mayor Buck, members of the council. The ordinance and resolutions before you are legislative decisions, which means that they are generally a policy decision which is within your sound discretion. In this particular matter, however, though it's discretionary, because what we're talking about is amending the comp plan, the ordinance and the resolution both must comply with applicable state laws as well as any applicable statewide planning goal or administrative rule adopted pursuant to the Land Use Chapter 197. A legislative amendment to the zoning code, development code, or development standards must also comply with any applicable provision of the Lake Oswego Comprehensive Plan, and Mr. Brodus will go over that, and it's contained in your staff report. The public hearing process will begin with a presentation by Mr. Brodus. Testimony will then be received from the public. Individuals will be allowed up to 5 minutes. Recognized neighborhood associations, homeowner associations, government agencies, or other incorporated public interest organizations will be allowed up to 10 minutes. The time limit should not include time taken up by questions from council or responses to such questions. Any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person, but in no case shall any person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. At this point, I'll ask if there are any councilors who have a financial conflict of interest, reminding you that ex parte contacts and site visits don't need to be declared, just if there are any financial conflicts of interest, and I'll wait a moment to see if there are.
No.
Seeing and hearing none, we're ready for the staff report. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brodus.
Mayor, councilors, thank you for having me. My name is Stefan Brodus. I'm the Director of Special Projects. I'm here to present this ordinance and resolution today. This is essentially an administrative housekeeping item for us. The proposed replacement wastewater treatment facility in the Foothills area has a funding plan of a few different sources. So those are listed up on your screen here. Of those include a WIFIA loan from the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, as well as municipal bonds, traditional utility revenue to help pay for the perpetual operations and maintenance of the facility, and then a small component, but an important component of this funding plan as well, is the system development charges. And in order to use those SDC funding, and forgive the typo on the presentation, but in order to use the SDC funding, this project needs to be included in our facilities plan. So that includes our comprehensive plan as well as the wastewater master plan. Both of those documents discuss wastewater treatment as it exists today, which is essentially a treatment facility that is owned and operated by the City of Portland, in which the City of Lake Oswego contributes flow to. And so these revisions that we are proposing today essentially amend those documents to reflect our current intention, which is to build a new treatment facility at the location, one in which the City of Lake Oswego would own and operate, and Portland would contribute minority flows to. So with that kind of overview, this is going to be a two-step process today, the first of which is Ordinance 2953. which is to amend the city's comprehensive plan to reflect those changes I previously discussed. So with that, I believe what we need to do from a procedural standpoint is we need to move to adopt Ordinance 2953, and then following that, we can discuss the resolution, the second part of this item, which is the wastewater master plan.
If you're done with that portion, we should take public testimony.
You're finished with the presentation? Okay, thank you. Yeah, is there any, we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to testify on this? Okay. Seeing no one, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and we'll entertain a motion on Ordinance 2953.
Move to tentatively approve Ordinance 2953
Second.
and direct staff to return on December 3rd, 2024 with a final version of the ordinance, including findings and conclusion for LU 240024.
All right. A motion has been made by Councilor Moop and seconded by Councilor Corrigan. Is there any discussion? All right. All those, and on the line, did the gentleman have any? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion, then they, okay, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Broadus. You. Back on,
See you back right now.
right now, okay.
No, yes, that's.
So the second part of this item is Resolution 2430. The ordinance that we just discussed modified the comp plan. So Resolution 2430 will modify the wastewater master plan. So this document, just to get in slightest bit more detail, this document really analyzed the conveyance part of our system, and in the capital improvement list that this master plan identified, really talked about rehabilitating pipelines and pump stations, all of the critical infrastructure that gets flow to the treatment plant. At that time, the idea of a new treatment plant, specifically owned by Lake Oswego, was not part of that scope. So what this resolution does is it provides a very simple amendment to the capital improvement list to add the treatment facility to that list. And then this, in conjunction with the ordinance that was just passed, satisfies these ORS requirements to expend the SDC funds on this project. So with that, the recommendation is move to adopt Resolution 2430.
okay. Now I see here it says, so are we taking a vote on this resolution, or is this happening on the 3rd? Or we vote on this tonight? Just looking at it.
Yes, well, either way, I think the recommendation is to move and adopt the resolution tonight.
Okay.
And then they'll return on December 3rd, just on Ordinance 2953 for you all to adopt the findings.
Okay.
Attorney Osanak, we're going to do both. I understand from Attorney Boone that we're doing both on December 3rd.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we are going to
We're
take a
gonna-
motion and a vote on the 3rd on this resolution.
You'll come back with the findings for the ordinance on the 3rd, as well as this resolution to vote on at that time.
Okay, but thank you for prepping us in advance. No one forget what we heard here tonight. Okay. All right, with that, I think then we're done with this item.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Broadus. Appreciate it. I'm having a little trouble with my monitor here. Can we just take a brief recess to troubleshoot? I don't have, my monitor doesn't work. One sec. I don't know if it's plugged in. What'd you do?
Maybe it's not.
Did you kick it? Well, I did kick it.
Oh, you see.
Okay, we're back in order. Sorry for that interruption. Next item on our agenda is item 9.1. This is the Republic Services Annual Rate Review. Joining us is Amanda Watson, the Sustainability Program Manager, and Chris Bell with Republic Services. Good afternoon to you both.
Good afternoon. Mayor, councilors, thank you for having me. My name is Amanda Watson. I'm the city's Sustainability Program Manager, and I'm joined by Chris Bell, CPA of Bell & Associates, who did our rate review for this year as our consultant with the city. Also in the audience, we have Cindy Rogers and Travis Comfort of Republic Services. They're also available to help answer questions if there are any related to Republic Services work. So I'll be giving the presentation today, but we have other folks who are resources to you. As you know, garbage and recycling collection in Lake Oswego are provided by Republic Services, operating under a 10-year exclusive franchise with the city. And Republic has 3 lines of business in Lake Oswego: residential, commercial, and industrial. Industrial is really drop box and roll-off compactor services, and residential and commercial include garbage, recycling, and mixed organics, yard debris, and food scraps. The annual service rate adjustment process is established in our franchise agreement, which is Ordinance 2901. To meet the goal of the franchise agreement, every year we hire a consultant, Bell & Associates, to do a financial review for us that consists of the following. Chris Bell helps to review the prior year annual cost report that Republic Services provides to the city, so that's the 2023 cost report, then projects results for the current franchise year, 2024, and then proposes recommendations for 2025 rates based on this financial analysis and the detailed cost report. Today, we're going to be reviewing this report, and I'll be presenting options for rate adjustments, including the recommendations from our consultant. But then we would, based on your direction today, we would come back at a future meeting with the rate schedule for 2025. So today is just to discuss the directions and options for adjusting rates for the coming year. So up on the screen here, this is what the Ordinance 2901 specifies the City Council shall consider in determining the appropriate rates to be charged by our franchisee. So the cost of performing services provided by Republic Services in this case, and any anticipated increase in costs, needs for equipment replacement or new equipment, a reasonable rate of return or fair operating margin, and this is defined as a target of 10% within an allowable range of 8 to 12%. Rates for these services in other cities in the metro area, and other factors deemed relevant by City Council. This year, Republic Services has not requested an extraordinary rate increase, which in our franchise agreement, they are allowed to request if unanticipated events would cause their cost to increase by more than 2%, or the rate of return to fall below 8%. So that did not happen this year, so Republic Services didn't request an extraordinary rate increase. We just did our standard kind of review of rates for this year in the financial analysis. However, Republic did ask that we establish a few new rates and fees for a few services that we did not already have established rates for in the city, and I'll go over those in detail a little later in the presentation. So first, I'm just going to review the findings from the financial review of rates. So these are the 2023 adjusted franchise results. You'll see the results for the return on revenues for each line of business, and then the total composite. So this is for 2023. The analysis found that the franchise performed at 8.1%, so at the low end of that allowable rate, but within the range. And then the 2024 projected results found that composite rate of return to be 9.73%, so very close for that 10% target. And this is this reflects the rate adjustments that the City Council approved last year, so at the end of 2023 for 2024. And as a reminder, those were around a 6% increase for residential services and approximately 7% for commercial services. So this kind of tells us that that rate adjustment, was successful in meeting the outcomes, or at least the rate of return target for the franchise agreement. So for this year, based on the financial analysis and the projected rate of return for 2024, City Council has a couple of rate adjustment options. One would be because Republic Services did not request an extraordinary rate increase, and the 2024 projection is right around that 10% target. City Council could choose to keep rates the same in 2025 that they are currently. Alternatively, the City Council could adjust rates for 2025 by applying known and measurable costs that include, later below in the slide, you'll see the known and measurable cost increases for 2024, some of which will carry over in the coming year, are increased wages for Republic Services drivers based on a new labor agreement, and administrative staff, inflation increase of 2.6%, this is the CPI, and then Metro's disposal fee increase of 11.9%. And this is a Metro regional fee that acts as a base, sort of a baseline for disposal costs across the region. Private transfer stations like Republic Services have to meet Metro's rate to have their full tonnage allocation for that facility, and so it tends to, the Metro rate, while it is for Metro facilities, tends to serve as a benchmark, and we see as Metro increases their rates that private transportations are needing to do the same. So one option for City Council is to apply these known and measurable costs to adjust rates for the coming year, for 2025. Alternatively, this was something I had a discussion with the city manager about after the staff report, so it is not reflected in there, but the City Council could choose to make an adjustment of a different amount, such as by the CPI. So kind of a couple different options here. I'm going to focus on the second one in the next few slides because this is the recommendation from our rate consultant, and the staff recommendation is that we do apply cost increases in adjusting rates for the next year to avoid larger rate increases in the future, right? The idea is that by adjusting by the amount that we know, costs will increase, and we can avoid having an extraordinary rate increase a couple of years from now, for example, and kind of smooth that cost impact on customers. So focusing on option B for now, these are the proposed rate adjustments if we were to take known and measurable costs into account. This is how residential and commercial rates would be adjusted. So this is really applying increases in labor and disposal. And because of this, you see it's sort of a variable change for different cart sizes, right? So a larger roll cart, a larger garbage cart, for example, the 95-gallon has a higher increase in cost than the smaller cart because there's more weight, right? Disposal is charged by weight of material collected. And so the proposed recommendation from our consultant, it would see residential rates increasing by 1.36 to 4.45%. So for a residential customer with a 35-gallon cart, that would raise their bill by about $1.20 per month. And then for commercial, the proposed adjustments would raise rates by 2.96% to 4.06%. So for a commercial customer with a 2-yard container services picked up weekly, this would raise their bill by $8.31 per month. Additionally, so this is for the previous slide was for cart and container collection services. Additionally, our rate consultant proposed that we increase up the drive rates to cover the cost of service of this service. So up the drive rates are when a customer has Republic Services driver walk up their driveway to take their container down to the truck and empty it rather than using, the mechanized arm. So it's for folks that tend to have longer driveways. Currently, our rates don't cover the cost of service for this service, and Republic Services told the city that they saw a lot more customers using the up the drive rate last year, and so the proposal is to adjust that to take into account the cost of labor in particular, right? Because normally a driver doesn't have to get out of their truck to service a house, but when they do have to, it takes a lot more time for them to get out of the truck, lock it, walk up the driveway, take the can down, get back into the truck, et cetera. I wanted to highlight that because, again, that is a fairly popular service in Lake Oswego. The other thing to note here is that for folks that need this service, for example, if they have, physical disability or are otherwise, unable to move their cart or their container to the street for it to be serviced, they don't have to be charged. This is just for folks who want this as a convenient service. The last two proposed adjustments are no change to drop box haul rates for 2025. And then to adjust ancillary services for inflation by the amount increase in CPI of 2.6%. Ancillary services are things like needing a new container if yours is broken, and other services that aren't impacted by labor and disposal costs. It would just be adjusted by inflation. So I mentioned that there were a few new rates that Republic Services asked that we establish because they weren't in our rate sheet for last year. And I'm going to go through those one by one. One of those rates is for additional mixed organic services. And this is for customers with, roll cart service if they need an additional cart, or if they are commercial customers that have roll cart service and they want to add mixed organics. So food scraps, for example, or yard debris and food scraps. We also need to establish contamination fees. This is charged when there is garbage or otherwise not, well, essentially if there's garbage in recycling or yard debris container. Right now we have an existing rate for recycling carts, but we don't have a contamination fee for yard debris roll carts or for a container for recycling or food waste containers, like a large dumpster style service. So contamination fees are assessed on recycling yard debris or food waste containers that have contamination, and that has to be dumped as garbage when there's significant contamination, so there's increased cost there. However, Republic takes an education-first approach to this, so when they are the drivers are dumping containers into their truck and they see that there's contamination in there, they're first going to reach out to that customer and let them know that the contamination was there and give them a chance to address that before any fees would be assessed. And we want to make sure that that continues to happen because this is about supporting our residents and businesses to reduce contamination in recycling and yard debris and keep costs down across the system. A few other additional fees that we need to establish are for drop boxes, so think dumpster rental. Right now, we don't have specific fees for rental, and Republic Services asked that we establish these, a per day and per month rental fee, to help move that inventory of drop boxes kind of through the system. So this is sort of encouraging folks not to use a dumpster for long-term storage, for example, really, but just to have it for the length of time they need it, for the job, for the disposal that they're using it for. The other fees up here are for the the mileage fee and the landfill service surcharge are assessed for customers that have special waste that needs to be taken straight to the landfill rather than to a Republic Services transfer station in Wilsonville, or to an incinerator rather than to a landfill. Republic's told us that it's likely only a small number of customers that need this service, so adding a separate rate for the service avoids making other Dropbox customers have to pay for those costs, right? It says only people who need that specific type of service are gonna have to pay for the cost of it. And finally, the last rate adjustment that we would like City Council to consider is how we structure our bulky waste rates. So currently, we have bulky waste rates that are based on yardage. So this is, bulky waste is, for example, if you have to get rid of a piece of furniture or a couch or something that otherwise wouldn't fit in your garbage or recycling container if it's recyclable. Right now, they're based on yardage, you'll see up on the screen, so that there's a minimum fee and there's a per yard rate. And this can be difficult for customers to predict the cost of the service, right? Personally, I couldn't really tell you how many yards my bookcase is, for example. So right now, customers have to call Republic Services to let them know what they need disposed of. They'll get an estimate at that point. Republic Services will collect their items, and then that customer gets a bill. And there's not really an easy way for that customer getting the bill to understand, is this the right amount to be charged, or they don't have a rate that is easy for them to reference. This also means that they can't compare the cost of getting their items collected by Republic Services versus, for example, driving it to the Metro South transfer station themselves and dropping it off there. So we'd like City Council to consider alternatives to the bulky waste rates that provide some more transparency for customers and cost transparency. And there's two main options for this. We could change the rates to a fee that is based not on yardage but on the weight of items. So small, medium, or large items would have a different rate. Or we could establish rates that for categories of items, so have more of an itemized list of bulky waste fees, for example, a rate for appliances, a rate for furniture, a rate for mattresses, et cetera. If we go a by weight option, these are the proposed rates from our public services, and you can see the structure rates. So small items up to 10 pounds, medium items 10 to 25 pounds. This provides more transparency for customers to be able to look at the items that they need to get rid of and be able to estimate the rate that that they will be charged for collection. The other option, sorry, this is small. The itemized option would look more like this, where you have different types of items and different rates based on the size of those items or specific types of items. Jurisdictions, there's a number of different jurisdictions that have moved to this itemized bulky waste rates or have had them in place for a while, and those include Hillsborough, Tualatin, and Wilsonville. This is actually the rates that, if I'm correct, that Wilsonville just adopted, and our rate consultant's perspective was that this would be probably an appropriate, that Lake Oswego could adopt these rates if we wanted to go with this structure of bulky waste rates. That is it for kind of the going through all the proposed changes. I know it's a lot, but I will stop and see if you have any questions about specific rates, or if you wanted to talk through kind of the three different options for adjusting rates. And I'll go back to that slide for now, if I can, right here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. We'll start with a question from Councilor Corrigan.
Me?
Well, you lit up your buzzer.
I did not.
Oh,
What did you, but I'm happy to talk. I'm gonna, there, now it's lit. What's it
oh,
look
you're lit
like?
twice.
No way.
Oh, she, oh.
I
oh,
swiped
oh,
his
you-
call,
oh,
but I'm happy
Oh, you're
to-
both Councilor Corrigan. Oh.
That's,
Identity. Oh,
but you
wow.
know,
This is the
I'm happy to go.
Technology, okay. Councilor Corrigan, the real Councilor Corrigan.
Yes.
Then the fake Councilor Corrigan.
So I'm interested in the proposal to simply raise everything by the CPI of 2.6. What would the advantage of that be, and what would the cost be with regard to service rates? Like, we know we've got 1.36 for residential. What does that look like? Do we know?
You want to take that
Yeah, I'll
one?
take a shot at it. Well, the 2.6%, it'll be a lower rate for the upcoming year, which is great if you're a ratepayer. And, 2.6 is, what's it, $31, $32 is the average rate, so 2.6% of that for your 35-gallon cart would be an average. And I believe that 35-gallon cart is the most popular cart size in the city. So that's what you're looking at, same with the commercial rate. So it's a little bit lower. However, we know that over the last 4 years, the metro tipping fee has been significant. And this year, it's going to be just a little under 12%. And the idea behind, using that known and measurable cost is to maintain that rate of return, try to keep it at 10% with minimal increases. And like I said, we know that cost and the union cost are incurred right now. And so if you don't pass it now, next year, you'll have to make up that plus a little bit more. And so that's the idea behind it. This is the same approach that we've been using in Clackamas County for Clackamas County unincorporated areas, where we take the known and measurable costs, and we've been maintaining those over the last, I want to say 6 or 7 years, and we've been able to keep that rate of return, incremental increases at around 8 to 10%. So that's the approach that we took here with that. The 2.6, the CPI. Like Amanda was saying, if we'd had that earlier, we could have calculated that and provided you both sets of rates so you could make a decision based on that information.
But you're guessing it'll be a little lower is what I think I heard.
Oh, absolutely, yes. If you want, can you go back to the, yeah, right there. So you're looking at that, the 20-gallon cart will be almost the same. But your 35 and your 65-gallon cart will be a little bit less, than that if you apply that 2.6 as opposed to 3.35. So we're talking literally pennies.
But then it sounds like that could come back to bite us next year. We may have a larger increase next year.
Correct.
It'll be less smooth of an increase.
Well, one of the things too, and we're trying to, I've been saying this for a while, and the numbers keep coming out wrong, is, trying to estimate what that tipping fee increase is going to be at Metro. Nobody knows. Metro doesn't even know. And so we were hoping at some point it'd go back down. But I can't anticipate whether it's going to go up next year or lower than what we had this year as far as the increase. And so if we account for what we know the known increase is this year, then chances are I'd love to have it where the increase is CPI for the metro and not have to have any rate action. But we just don't know.
Right. I think, Metro had, they adopted what they called a fee predictability model a few years ago and said that they would keep the increase in the disposal rate to 8%, but they haven't done this year, so I think we can expect it will be, at least 8% going forward, but could be more, so.
And then we have that other additional fee they may add on to pay for the new facilities.
Yep.
Yeah. Which of course wouldn't flow, that would just be, I don't know.
Oh, it'll flow down to you.
It'll flow down.
Everybody's going to pay for that, yes.
That sounded more like a direct-to-consumer fee, though. I don't know how they'd implement it, no?
They don't
Through the
do
haulers?
direct-to-consumer, they would bill through the disposal companies.
Unless you're getting buried. That's direct.
Well, that's different, I realize that it can be confusing, but actually their cemetery program is quite separate from the solid waste program.
Which is good.
Yes.
Don't want to confuse
We want to
those two.
keep it.
Okay. I see, we'll go with Counselor Raff, and then Counselor Boop, and Counselor Windland. Okay.
Thanks. Fake Counselor Corrigan has a couple questions here. You mentioned that those customers that are disabled or maybe, older can get the up the drive service. Is that at no cost? Is that at a discount?
Yeah, my understanding is that it's customers with a disability can get it at no cost. I don't know if Republic Services can speak to that. I believe it's free for customers with a
How do you
disability.
know? How do you know that the person's disabled? Do they have to have a doctor's note?
I cannot answer that. I can get back to you on that. I'm
Okay,
not
that'd be
entirely
great.
sure what
And then
the
I would
process is.
assume then that if that's the service that we're offering, we're also offering it to those of our community that might be, older who it's hard to walk and pull. Like sometimes I have trouble pulling my trash can up my little hill, right? So I would like to see maybe some courtesy given to our older residents as well, if that's what we're doing. And then so I have a tough time thinking that of saying that we should just blanket increase the rate just because it's going to make it easier for future year increase when we don't know what the future year increase, just like you said, like it may go down, it may not change. I feel like, it's really easy for us to kind of ticky-tack tax our residents on every little thing, and it's a little water tax or a water rate increase by 50 cents here, and it doesn't mean anything. But over 50 years, that's a significant increase, and so I'm really concerned about us just thinking like, oh, look, it's only $1.50. What does it mean? What does it matter? And so my concern is we just immediately jump to, let's just increase it. It's not a big deal, when maybe there are other ways that we can offset that increase that we might need to do. So maybe I'd love to see some numbers at some point before we go too far down the road of maybe we have that increase absorbed in all the elective services, but the residential services we don't affect. So why do you shake your head?
The elective services are less than 3-4% of the total revenue.
No, I understand, but so if we have to take 2.6% increase in residential, if we were not to increase the residential services at all, but you still need to absorb that cost somewhere, put that cost into like the dumpster costs or more of the elective services, but leave the residential services alone and keep the rates as flat as we can, but absorb the costs elsewhere within the P&L.
Well, if you go back to, you guys are already doing that. I mean, your commercial business is subsidizing your residential service.
I'm not talking about commercial, so can you pull up the
You're
deck?
talking about Dropbox and
Yeah, like
that
there was
laundry
a
list.
slide where it said like drop boxes were like increased by like 130%. Like the rates increased. Can you pull up this? I'm seeing
It's
Ollie and
just on
John, which is
the-
great, but I
yeah.
want to see this slide. Yes, so like up the drive, like,
Yeah.
this is something, besides the people who are disabled or older, like this is a great way, like this is elective to me. Like it's a nice to have. So instead of raising the rates for residential services and the stuff that I have to pay as a homeowner, can we, instead of increasing that by whatever rate it is, roll that up into this?
Well, you're two flaws with that. Number one, this is not generating a lot of revenue, not to the extent that it's going to cover the, almost a 12% increase in your disposal. And disposal is over 40% of the overall cost of doing business here in the city, as well as everywhere else. So the increase in disposal, I would tell this body that you need to make clear to Metro that these increases got to stop. And they can do that.
Yeah.
They can do that. They just haven't. That would be, and
Like, I don't mind increasing this stuff, like,
Yeah.
but the
The other-
day-to-day, like, taking my trash out, like, come on, like, it's never gonna stop.
Right.
the other flaw is that how many people are going to say, I don't want to pay $10?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's one of those you can't gauge. I'm with you with,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, with this stuff. This, you know, when I saw the $2, I think, you know, I just, you know, it's $120 to run that truck. That guy's getting out, and I'm just doing the time. It's actually, you know, the proposed rate should be around $25.
Right. I think so too. So my overall point is, I'm hesitant to just blanket increase the commercial and residential services. I don't mind the other stuff, but let's try to make it easier on our community and less costly wherever we can. And I feel like we're always under the gun on this, and we're always getting kind of bullied around by these utility organizations. But God, if there's any other way to skin this cat, I'm all for finding out how. So,
Right.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Boop.
No, I thank you. I agree with you, and that's what I was gonna say. We have to, you know, it's, when I look at this, I was saying, like, from 242 to 1083, like, and if it's a service that I may not need, I agree, but the daily services also, I give one example. The last time around, we said that the schools were not paying the 100%, they have 50%. There are schools that are still paying the same rate.
They were already at 50%?
No, they've never.
Yeah, no, under the prior arrangement with Republic, the earlier, they were already at half. So if they're paying the same rate, that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
No, they never get that rate, the 50%. They're paying 100%.
Oh, well.
And when you call Republic Service, folks are telling you, we don't know. Like, you don't know who to talk.
That's a customer service issue, though, not a rate
deal with that
issue.
offline.
Yeah,
We
no,
do
yeah,
need
but-
to-
yeah,
it-
but-
We do need to deal with that.
Yeah, that's it. I mean,
But
there's-
that's a
issue.
customer service issue as opposed to the
to
rates.
yeah, but I'm just
write it
coming
down.
and say that, yeah, like, yeah, the schools continue to pay the same rate. Maybe public schools, I don't know, but the private schools. And the other thing also is when I saw £10 at, like, there's a place where you, for the pickup, yeah, like for £10, I mean,
Oh, the
Oh,
bulky
for the
waste.
yeah,
bulky
like the
waste.
bulky
Yep,
waste,
yep.
like, yeah, like for £10, 26. I mean, do I read it correctly that if I'm throwing something, if it's up to £10, it's 26? And yeah,
bulky waste.
no, but yeah, but even that, like, sometimes I'd rather go to the dumpster myself and throw my stuff.
I think you'll pay about
Yeah,
that when you go.
but it shouldn't be that way. It should be, you know, I am on the same place that we have to think of our people. Like, we just cannot, every year we come and Republic Service raises the rates. People have their inflation. Our people who voted for me, they're folks who really are tired of paying all these things. It's Republic Services, it's PGE, it's Comcast, and we are like the small guys. We are here making the decision that, oh, it's $1. $1 at the end is a lot of money for many people. So I'd rather not pay that thing that is coming next year, or anyway, next year you have to raise. We are not obliged to raise. It depends on how the economy is going to be. It depends on many factors. I'd rather not pay something on a prediction than, you know, wait until it comes and I pay it.
Correct.
You know, that's...
Correct. The one thing that we have in here is that rate increase that we did use for Metro, that was incurred in July 1st. That rate passed.
And with Metro, I think the cities will have also to say enough is enough.
The cities are saying that. I think you need to be in unison when you say enough's enough, and now explain to us why the costs keep escalating. I've got a lot of information regarding that, and a couple of the cities I work with specifically started to ask, what can we do? What questions we need to ask of Metro to get to the level of accountability that we have with our haulers? Because the haulers, you know, if you said, I want to see this information, they're going to show you the information. They've always been willing to share that. The one thing that they don't have control over is the biggest cost that they have is that disposal cost, and they are compelled. I've even thrown out the idea with one, what if you dissolve the waste shed, and what if each one of these cities worked in collaboration with the haulers and a transfer station and said, let's set rates, let's set something that's fair and equitable, that's reasonable to cost of service. Because right now, at $160 a ton to dispose of garbage in the port, that's crazy. That's crazy, because the cost for the transfer, the disposal and the transport is not $160. It's significantly lower.
It's low, and the other thing, like some people are composting. If they're not, what I understand in the, the package we have, is if I am not composting, for example, I put compost stuff with everything. So Republic Service will give me a warning and say, hey, you can do, is it what you mean?
No, it's the other way around. So if you do have a yard debris bin with food scraps and you put, plastic bags of garbage in that bin, that's when there would be a fee. Not for putting food scraps or recyclable in your garbage. It's only for, to make sure that the recycling bin is only recyclable materials and that the yard waste or compost bin is only compostable materials. So it's just making sure that those recyclable streams are clean. It wouldn't be a penalty if, a customer were to be putting food scraps in their garbage. That there would not be a fee for that. We don't like that behavior to happen. We want to encourage folks to compost, but there's no fee in that case.
Okay, but if we compost, there is a fee for composting.
No. So for if you're a resident, for example, you pay one rate for all of that. But if you were to put garbage in your compost bin, there would be a fee that would be applied only after, educational efforts failed, essentially. If that wasn't corrected after folks were told there was composting and they kept putting garbage in their compost bin, then that fee, Republic Services could charge that fee. But we're going to make sure it's an education-first approach for folks.
Thank you. Councilor Wendland.
Well, I'd just like to follow up on the comments about Metro. I've been on council now for 6 years, and we get a great presentation from Republic, and I think they do a fabulous job in our community. They're up against rising costs for labor. We had that happen a couple years ago, and with new contracts and so on, and we went ahead and we want to make sure that the model that we're using between an 8 and 12% net profit works. But I think going to the comments before, it's really a Metro issue that is really causing this. And I think my suggestion would be to have our Metro rep come before council and explain why we've had 10, 15, 20, 30, 40% increases for the last 7 years, because I believe what they're doing is taking money from us and putting it in other projects that don't have anything to do with garbage and disposal. So I may be off on that, but I can't imagine their costs going up exponentially faster than higher education or healthcare. It shouldn't, but they've gotten away with it, and I think it's time for them to make a presentation. And if we can have our consultant be in the same room at the same time, that would be helpful, so he could counteract any misinformation that Metro is giving us. So that's my suggestion. And in reality, whether you're going to massage the numbers a little bit for a slightly bigger increase versus cost of living, over the course of time, I think our ratepayers really like consistency and increases and not huge jumps. And I think the numbers look like they're massaged a little bit so that we can keep things on a sort of straight line increase over the course of time. So I'm fully supportive of all your work and your suggestions, and I would support this. But I would like to have a report on why our disposal fees continue to go exponentially up. That's it. Thanks.
Well, we do have, thank you, Councilor Windler. We do have our, Councilor Lewis is coming to the council to talk on affordable housing, though. But if we'd like to talk about this, or I know there's other cities engaged in it as well, we'll find the appropriate forum to have this, this conversation and get more information. Good point. Councilor Afghan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for our team. I do understand there are some costs that have already been realized and they're actualized, so we don't really have an option on that to reject them. But what are the numbers that we're forecasting and they haven't happened yet? And what is the added cost per residential account?
That's a good question. So the known and measurable cost increases that have been laid out and taken into account in those proposed rate adjustments are for 2024. So those are known. We aren't actually projecting costs for 2025 at this point for the rate adjustments. We're just taking into account the known ones. So I think Chris was speaking about future years. We don't know what Metro would do when they're adopting their rate for 2025 to 2026. But in the proposed rate adjustments here, that's only taking into account the known costs for 2024.
Thank you so much. In support of what you have done, I believe you have done a great job, and I love our services with Republic. I don't think they are cause of this race, and I 100% agree with Councilor Wetland. And I would love to see Metro come and explain why these huge jumps we're getting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Afghan. Well, it is interesting that all of the regions' disposal rates are set off of the Metro rates, and if the costs, you imagine if they were doing it very efficiently somehow, that others would say, hey, I mean, we can't do it for this, and we have to charge more, but no one charges more, because they are kind of setting, and that's, so it kind of demonstrates what's taking place. One good thing that we have done over the years is really kept the cost of the 20-gallon, thinking about seniors in the community, people have kept that cost low, and I see, the different percentage increases, but, doing the math, this is a 3-cent per gallon increase, for the 20-gallon, the 3-cent for the 35, the 65, 95. And Mr. Bell, I'm just wondering what you see like in other jurisdictions, because the spread, between like the 65 and the 95, for instance, is just so small, a few dollars more for a much larger container. And one thing we're trying to do is get folks to use their compost, and still a lot of folks don't even know that they can put their compost. That's not, a you issue, but, and so if we make it so accessible to get this extremely large garbage container, it just, is kind of encouraging people just to dump everything in the garbage and do less recycling and composting. Did you see the same, like just couple dollar spread between a 65 and a 95?
I'm glad you brought that up. The 95-gallon cart, if you look at the cost right now, is significantly over the cost of service. It's huge. And same with the 65. So there's a significant spread.
Well, because the fixed cost, right.
Just fixed and variable, the total cost of service. And so the question that you got to ask yourself is, are people really spending $62 to throw everything in that garbage cart when they got the other two carts there? And the answer is no. I mean, there's maybe one or two examples. Mayor Gamba a couple of years ago at City of Milwaukee thought the same thing. So he walked the street and they started lifting lids, and he was surprised. He was shocked that people had a 65 or 95-gallon cart were actually recycling, and to the extent even more so. So what he found out is that people who had the 65 or 95 usually had a bigger family, 4, 5, 6 kids. Sure. And so they were a little bit more cognitive of utilizing that recycling and the composting bin. Lake Oswego, I'm going to tell you, the more affluent the area, the higher the recycling is, the cleaner the recycling. And so I don't think that's a problem here.
Okay.
In fact, I would be hesitant to say you should raise it even more, and because at some point it becomes a penalty. I understand the thinking is if we make this high enough, people will recycle. But if you make it too high, people do just the opposite, and they use that garbage cart. When it's filled, they put it in recycling or the yard debris cart or a combination of both.
Exactly.
And we're seeing that elsewhere too. City of Portland saw that when they went from weekly to every other week. The amount of contamination, they were shocked. And I don't know why they were shocked, because when you take away that level of service, people have to, they still generate whatever that amount is, yeah.
Okay, so you feel like this is a good, the rates are set.
Oh,
to the
yeah, no,
appropriate rate, so-
the difference between the 65 and 95, it's not a lot, but if you have, I got a neighbor who's 91 years old. He's got a 65-gallon cart. It's one dude, He generates a bag, and I asked him, I said, why don't you get a 32-gallon, Ron? He's like, I want that just in case. So he sets that cart out every week, and it's 3/4 of the way empty. And you're gonna have some people that are gonna do it because they want that capacity when they need it. So, it's a combination of individual decisions when they look at the rates, they look at the service. Some people
The
weigh
rate's
it.
lower for everyone else then, too, because when they run the cost, they're
Well,
paying, but they're not
They're
disposing.
paying a little bit more. So back to what was it saying? Hey, if you want this higher cost in this 95-gallon cart, you're paying a little bit more. You're paying a higher that's a higher margin for Republic.
Less per gallon.
Exactly, but it's also offsetting some of the cost of the 20-gallon. So that's where you kind of get that balance.
Okay. It is good just that we, have in the past reduced the 20-gallon, or not even increased the 20-gallon, recognizing that it is what most of the single-member households or senior households utilize. So just to keep, going kind of to Councilor Raff's point, I mean, trying to keep the costs for our older residents as low as possible, and we've spread the cost to, people, families, and, others in town. And I think we did that the last.
The only thing I would caution is if you make that too low, because I saw this up in Mount Vernon, Washington, they made it $12, the 20-gallon. And 45% of the people subscribed to that, and they packed their garbage can. They pulled out the insert, they packed it up, and then they put the rest of their garbage into recycling. And so Waste Management is saying your level of contamination recycling is through the roof. This is why
I see.
This is why you're paying,
Yeah, sweet spot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I hear you there. Okay, no, thank you, that's helpful. On the bulky waste, looking at that list, I'm just wondering, I mean, some of these items are items, obviously not on the per weight, but the specific list here, that, we don't necessarily, well, I guess I'm not sure what Republic does with, say, like a bicycle, which we have organizations, you can give the bicycle, they'll come pick it up, for free and use it. And I don't know if Republic's taking it and giving it, or if they're taking it and, dumping it. So I wouldn't want the city to encourage people to dump things that could otherwise be reused. And when you put it on a list, it seems like, oh, well, if I have an extra bike, what I do is I set it out of the curb and I pay $18.01 for it. So do we know what Republic does with the bulky items? Are they repurposed?
That's the disposal fee, unless,
They're just-
Do you want to?
Scrap. Okay. So maybe however we do this, I appreciate that, when there's the reuse option, we somehow promote that, or Republic promotes it, and then saying, hey, you don't need to, I mean, we will dispose of it, of course, but here are other options, free bike for kids, we have organization even within the town that will take, I'm sorry, I'm stuck on the bikes. I mean, some of these things, there's not gonna be much of a, waterbed. Are people still sleeping on those?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, yeah, and I get calls all the time of what do I do with XYZ, and so I always give them that reuse option, but then, it's sometimes a mattress won't be reusable, and so this is to give them the option. I think, the motivation behind restructuring our current fees was to just make that cost more transparent for folks, and I think that either of these two options would still be more transparent than what we have now. So I think it's just between the preference between having a category by weight or having an itemized list would be up to the council to decide what you think would be best for folks.
What would you, I mean, is this list all inclusive? I mean, are there other items people dispose of? I imagine it could be anything and everything that aren't on the list.
Yeah, and I think that's why they have the special services not listed, and then, for appliances, large appliances, small appliances, and so I think this is comprehensive enough that the itemized option is specific enough for folks to understand, but still does allow for variation in items and have, if it's not listed on here, it's just that hauler will charge the reasonable cost of collection. So yeah, my staff opinion here is that this is nice and transparent for customers.
Yeah.
But if the council prefers, I think that the by weight option is still better than what we have now with just a kind of unspecified yardage fee. Really just my interest, because, you know, I hear a lot from residents when they have questions about service rates. I want to be able to point folks to our established rates and have them understand what they'll be charged for service. So I think either of those would help get in that direction.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I do like the itemized list, as long as we're promoting in general, you know, reuse of items that can be repurposed, donated, you know, or recycled instead of being disposed of. And then in general, I agree with, you know, Councilor Wendland that we know the rates are, and we can deal with the Metro issue separately, but the costs, you know, to provide these services do go up every year, and I think it's better to have an incremental, you know, gradual increase than facing a steeper increase in an out year. So I'm in favor of, I guess it would be the second option, the rates as proposed here. Councilor Burdick.
Thank you for the presentation. And I would just say I like the itemized option. I actually think the weights makes it really confusing. And then, you know, how's your scale? I mean, so I prefer the itemized options. But I also will concur with the mayor. I think anything we can do to promote reuse, even if that's just providing links so people can say, oh, well, I have a lot of soft goods working at that. Who will take rugs? That's always like a big question to me. Like, who's going to take some of those soft goods?
Water beds.
So anything we could do to help with that, I think would be fantastic. And then I also concur with Councilor Wendland and so forth about the rate increases.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Does that give? I mean, is everyone pretty much? I know good comments all around on, you know, trying to keep the costs as low as possible, but and this will come back. But is everyone kind of on board with the proposed plan for the? Yeah, Councilor.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that you guys do follow up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep, I'll get back to you with how that works.
Like, same thing with water beds. Like, if they don't know, they don't know.
Yep.
So how do we communicate out that
Yes.
there's a service available?
That's right. And I know we're not discussing the franchise here and everything we do, but communication is just, you know, key, and the city can do, you know, its piece, and Republic, you know, communicating with the customers and just what services are available, especially on that compost. That's the one I've been hearing recently. People like, oh, wow, we can put our compost. We don't even know that. And it's like, oh my gosh, because it's been quite a few years now that we've had it, and that's a good way to divert a lot of waste out of the landfill, so. 7 years, yeah, I know. But new people move in from Florida where they don't even know what recycling is. And so compost, you know, they don't even, that's, you know, back on the cemetery side of things, yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bell.
Thank you. All right,
Thank you for the
we'll
good
return with
presentation.
the proposed updated rate sheet based on your guidance. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda is item 9.2. This is a study session on the Urban and Community Forest Plan implementation and code update. And we have a little bit, yeah, this might be a bit. Let's take a little recess. We'll take about a 5-minute-ish recess. Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, I think this one is going to take a little longer.
Okay. We're back in order. And so we're, as stated before the recess, we're on item 9.2. This is Urban and Community Forest Plan Implementation and Code Update. We have Director Numanolu and Ms. Holland with us. Good evening to you both.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening to Mayor and Council. I'm Jessica Numanolu, the Community Development Director, and Morgan Holland is with Morgan Holland and Associates, and she is our Planning Consulting Arborist. And has worked here for a number of years and been involved in even the original Urban and Community Forestry Plan and State of the Urban Forest. So she's a great resource and will help answer questions after the presentation. So tonight we are talking about the tree code update. This is our first study session on the update to the tree code. And for the presentation tonight, what I'm looking for for the council is feedback on a very high-level scope and timeline for the update to the Urban and Community not Urban Community Forest Plan, gosh, I'm back in time, the tree code, which would begin potentially in early 2025. And in terms of what I'm going to talk about tonight, I want to talk about how we got here to the tree code, so a little bit of background as to the process to get here. An overview of the recommended code amendments from the Urban and Community Forestry Plan, and then we'll talk about a very high-level draft project scope and schedule, and then there'll be time for questions and feedback. So I want to start off by first thanking the Council for the systematic approach you've taken to address urban forest management. There's been a lot of talk over the years, particularly during Council goal setting, about updating the tree code, which is great, and the tree code is one of the ways that we manage our urban forest in the city, but there are a lot of other there's a lot of other components to managing an urban forest, and it was really important that we did a comprehensive update of these plans before we went and made an update to the tree code, and those plans helped us inform our update to our tree code that's coming up. So we started with the State of the Urban Forest report. That report was first done in 2009, and that was updated at the end of 2022. And what that did is it provided an overview of the urban forest benefits and threats, which had changed a lot since 2009, including climate change. We've seen a lot of more frequent storms and other effects from climate change. We also have emerging threats that we didn't see before, such as the emerald ash borer, Mediterranean oak borer, et cetera. The State of the Urban Forest also provided an updated assessment of the city's tree canopy and much more detailed than our original analysis in 2009. So it included information such as how much of our canopy cover is evergreen versus deciduous. What are our tree heights? We even have urban canopy analysis by neighborhood. So lots of great information there. And then it also provided an overview of the city tree stewardship and regulatory efforts and community programs. The next step then was to update the Urban and Community Forestry Plan, which of course the Council just adopted that this past spring. And this plan is a planning and policy tool that provides a framework for ensuring that the forest is cared for in accordance with best management practices and community goals. And there are several components of that plan that helped inform the proposed amendments to the tree code and the community development code that we're going to talk about tonight. Urban forest sustainability was one component, and that described a recommended inventory approach and sustainability indicators and thresholds that should be measured as part of a tree inventory. This will give us a more detailed assessment. While the tree canopy assessment was great, it doesn't tell us what are our species distribution. It doesn't tell us what the health and condition of our trees are, and all of that information is really important for us to make proactive management decisions about our urban forest, as well as coming up with a hazard assessment program as well. The other things that were covered in urban forest sustainability was pest management and invasive species preparedness. The other section is the urban forest management section, and that reviewed current urban forest management practices in the city and measured them against industry best management practices and made recommended improvements. And then finally was the urban forest codes, plans, and policies section, which reviewed all of our plans, codes, and policies related to tree and forest management and makes recommendations on the city's these existing codes, plans, and policies related to trees. And both the Community Development Code and the Tree Code are included as appendices to the Urban and Community Forestry Plan, and they contain more detailed basically recommended actions that were included in the strategic plan and the implementation plan of the UCFP. So all of the recommendations that we're talking about tonight came out of that urban and community forestry plan recommendations from the sustainability, forest management, and analysis of our current plans, policies, and ordinances. So in terms of the recommendations, there are two types of recommendations that are outlined in the implementation plan, and the implementation plan for the UCP was included as attachment 1 in your packet. The first is non-regulatory actions. So these are things that that we aren't that are beyond the tree code or the community development code. So but are nevertheless extremely important in urban forest management and complementary to the regulatory tools. So this will be things like education and community engagement. Example are the tree care workshops that we put on. We did 9 workshops in this last year. We provide all sorts of educational materials. One of our most popular is the Right Tree, Right Place brochure. Community volunteer events, which includes ivy poles and planting in our city parks and natural areas. We have a number of voluntary programs that we implement, including the Backyard Habitat Certification Program. We partner with local organizations to implement that program. The Habitat Enhancement Program, which is administered through the Parks Department and allows for or incentivizes planting of understory plants and other sort of enhancement in sensitive lands area, particularly along riparian areas and wetlands. And then, of course, we have our Heritage Tree Program, which celebrates our large, significant trees in the neighborhood. City stewardship activities are also part of the non-regulatory actions in the UCFP recommendations, and that includes things like conducting a tree inventory, which I just talked about, tree planting. We have consistently and continue to plant far more trees than we take out in the city, coming up with a pest management plan as well as a tree risk management plan. As far as the regulatory tools go, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight, we have 2 main regulatory tools. One is the tree code, which of course regulates tree removal in the city. Any tree that's 6 inches in diameter or greater is regulated. And then we have our tree protection measures, which requires tree protection fencing and other measures to protect trees during development activities. Our Community Development Code has a number of tree-related and sensitive lands-related regulations. So in our sensitive lands regulations, for instance, we have mitigation requirements. We all know that the urban forest is more than just trees. It includes our understory planting, as well as soils. And so sensitive lands regulations are really important in protecting those. Our landscape requirements, we have standards that, for instance, require street tree planting for certain types of development. And we have our overlay district tree preservation and planting standards. And the Lake Grove Village Center overlay, as well as the West Lake Grove overlay district, both have very extensive tree preservation and planting requirements. So it's really important to kind of bring those together because both the regulatory and non-regulatory actions in the UCFP are really critical in managing the city's urban forests because the vast majority of the city's urban canopy is on private property. So what this map shows is that 80%, that's everything in green, of the tree canopy in the city is located on private property. That means the 20% is on city-owned or managed property, and the way that breaks down is the blue area is our public rights-of-way. That represents 12% of the tree canopy, and then the red areas are the city-owned and managed properties, which represent 8% of the tree canopy. So by regulating tree removal, the city can help ensure it maintains its canopy cover. And with approximately 53.4% canopy cover, I would say that our tree regulations have been pretty effective. We've had a tree code since 1973, which is quite unusual for a city. However, the non-regulatory efforts are just as important because there are a lot of risks for the long-term health and sustainability of our urban forests due to invasive species, climate change, pests, lack of care and maintenance. So it's really important that we have both aspects of that in our urban forest management. So diving into the actual recommended tree code and community development code amendments. So all of these came out of the update to the urban community forestry plan. I am not going to go through each one. Their detailed list was, or more detailed list was provided in attachment 2. I will also point out that this was not intended to be an exhaustive list. The idea was that we wanted to make sure that when we did those updates to the State of the Urban Forest Report and Urban Community Forestry Plan, that we did it in a comprehensive way and that informed the update to the tree code. We fully recognize that when we get into the actual update to the tree code, that we will likely identify more amendments that may be necessary. So one of the things is to assure that we have clear and objective standards for housing. This is a requirement of ORS 197.3074. And it requires cities to provide clear and objective standards, conditions, and procedures that regulate housing development in particular. And that just ensures that the city is not using discretionary or subjective criteria to deny or discourage housing development through unreasonable cost or delay. So that's something we need to evaluate in our code and make sure that we've got clear and objective standards. Tree mitigation. There are a number of recommendations with regard to tree mitigation, but just to give you some examples, one of the things identified in the State of the Urban Forest Report was the fact that we have a lot of large stature trees that are coming out but are being replaced with dogwoods or smaller stature trees. So we want to look at ways that we can prioritize the replanting of large stature trees for mitigation where it's feasible. We also want to update our mitigation tree list to include climate-adapted species, which it doesn't currently have, and we want to look into requiring mitigation for more tree removal types. So for instance, right now we require mitigation for type 2 tree removal, but we don't require it for type 1, for hazard, or dead. So there's lots of opportunity to assure additional tree planting by looking at other tree removal types. As far as updating our tree protection standards to reduce construction impacts, this came from recommendations from our code enforcement staff who review our tree protection plans in the city. And it just basically would be amendments to clarify for applicants what is required for a tree protection plan so they just have more clarity and can kind of understand what may be required. So things like understanding that we might put a condition that you have to hand dig for excavation in certain circumstances to properly protect a tree, or we may require soil amendments or watering to help mitigate stress from development activities, things like that. Another one is addressing tree removal for pest management and to reduce ladder fuels, and this came out of course, the emergence of the emerald ash borer in particular. What we don't want to do is just go in and remove every single ash tree. That's not the right answer, but we do want to do what we can to slow the spread of that pest. And one of the ways to do that is some proactive targeted tree removal where you remove some of the poor condition ash trees, which is where the EAB can get introduced and then spread out to healthy trees. So making sure that we can facilitate that our Parks Department and our private property owners can do that type of proactive targeted management without too much red tape. So making sure we account for that in our regulations, as well as helping reduce ladder fuels. A good example of that was the Mountain Park fuel reduction project that they did where there was a lot of invasive removal, which really helped reduce the amount of understory that could potentially catch fire and then get up into the tree canopy. And so that kind of helps with wildfire protection. Other recommended amendments including developing incentives and guidelines for preserving trees during development. This isn't actually regulatory, it's more trying to encourage folks to preserve more development, but this could be very useful to try to help preserve more trees during development. Updating our hazard tree criteria, and this is specifically to specify a time frame for which a tree presents a clear and public safety hazard, which isn't currently in our hazard criteria. And then updating tree planting and mitigation requirements in overlay districts and sensitive lands to align with best management practices. If we look at some of our sensitive lands regulations, we require so many plants and trees per, like every 500 square feet or something, we have a certain amount. Well, we find that it's overplanting in a lot of areas and doesn't account for existing trees. So we really need to, just finesse those standards so that they align with best management practices. And then another sort of broad category is requiring street tree planting for more development types. Right now, we only require street tree planting for minor developments like land divisions, and if there's like a new commercial development or multifamily development. There are a few handful of neighborhoods that require it for new single-family dwellings. First Edition, Forest Hills is one of them, but the vast majority of neighborhoods in the city do not require street tree planting for new housing that isn't a minor development. So this would be single family and middle housing. So that's another opportunity to get some more trees planted. So moving on to a very high level scope, what we would plan on doing is we will be looking to hire a project consultant for this. There's going to be some fairly extensive public outreach involved, but the consultant tasks would generally fall into these categories. First, we would want them to review city tree documents, and this includes the State of the Urban Forest Report, the Urban and Community Forestry Plan, Tree Code, and the Community Development Code. We also want them to review other jurisdictions' tree regulations. So this is an opportunity to see what other jurisdictions are doing and get some lessons learned, what is working, what isn't working, and particularly jurisdictions that have clear and objective standards for their tree regulations. We would like them to develop then some initial findings and recommendations. We'll be conducting public outreach throughout the process, which I'll talk about on the next slide. And then they would prepare several drafts of the code amendments, including drafts that would be reviewed by staff, an urban forest task force, which we're recommending. It could be boards and commissions, city council, Planning Commission, Development Review Commission, so lots of opportunity for review and feedback during public engagement. And that would, the staff would recommend that the council appoint an urban forest task force of 8 to 10 reps, not 33, please. And they would consist of, and this is just an example, this is not intended to be an exhaustive list, but include reps that are residents or property owners, neighborhood associations, tree professional, local organizations, developer, builder rep, boards and commission, obviously trying to get a wide variety of stakeholders on that task force. And they would be charged with, helping make recommendations as well as review deliverables for the project and just helping guide the project overall. We would also propose to conduct a number of stakeholder focus groups, again, kind of similar categories: residents, property owners, businesses, tree professionals, developer, builders, et cetera. And we would hold several focus group meetings individually. And then public workshops and meetings. This could include things like the Mayor's Roundtable, the Neighborhood Chairs meeting. We can attend the Sustainability Advisory Board meetings, the Parks Natural and Resources Advisory Board meetings, et cetera. And then, of course, there would be Planning Commission and City Council work sessions and hearings. Normally, a tree code amendments would not need to go to the Planning Commission for a recommendation, but in this case, we would take it to them because we are proposing some associated Community Development Code amendments, as well as we would like to get their feedback on clear and objective standards as well. So the tentative schedule for this project would be to, after the study session and feedback from the council, we would develop a more detailed project scope. We would issue a request for proposals for the consultant in early 2025, and with hopefully the selection and contracting wrapping up in February. And then the process to actually update the tree code and the CDC would take place between approximately March and January, and we would expect then to have final code amendments ready to adopt in either January or February of 2026. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm sure you have lots of questions, and we look forward to your feedback.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the presentation. And just to clarify, the items in the report, attachment 2, the tree code amendments, are these all things that we would have the task force look into as written right here? We would just have them look into all of these
Yes,
items?
and that would be, so that's the list of recommendations that came out of the Urban Community Forestry Plan, but obviously they're in the review, particularly in the consultant's review, we expect that there may be other recommendations, and of course, during the public engagement as well.
Okay, so new ones could come up.
Right.
Some, they could say, we're not quite so sure about this.
Right, but the overall approach would be these are targeted amendments. This isn't, when we did a review during the Urban Community Forestry Plan update, there wasn't a finding that our code is just a throwaway, that we need to start over.
No.
It's working pretty well, but there are definitely things that need to be updated to, address urban forest sustainability and how, and the sort of recommended urban management practices.
No, that's right. That's a good point. This work that we have done the past couple of years on the Urban and Community Forest Plan, that was the look at the code, what's working well, what might not be working so well, and now we're here with the items that have fallen out of it, ready to address them in more detail. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Councilor Raff.
Thank you. Am I now Councilor Raff?
You're back, yes.
I'm back. No more Councilor Corrigan.
You're not a...
Just a couple things. I don't think they're big things, but just want to clarify. When you talk about clear standards for development, obviously, clear and objective standards for development is a hot topic. It's one that probably we spend a lot of time on. But also within development, there's also clear and objective standards for just onesie-twosie things. Someone is not building a whole house, but they want to put a patio in, or, just want to clear a tree because it's dead or damaged. Like those, I want to make sure we also kind of obsess those little things as well that, we may not hear a ton about, but people have a lot of trouble with. So I just want to make sure that that's included, and we don't just like blanket statement around developing, but it's also like small little projects as well that people just seem to have trouble just getting a tree cut down if it's, and that also includes damaged trees. And I know you have some info in here on pests and things like that, so that's great. Just want to highlight that. On the task force and public engagement, I want to really make sure that we treat developers equally in those sessions. I can imagine that those engagement sessions and task forces might be a little bit antagonistic towards developers with some of the people that are involved in our community. And I just want to make sure, and so I'm imagining that developers may not want to be a part of them because they don't want to get like just kind of the back and forth that we've all seen on email. So even if we don't get developers that want to be in those meetings, I think we have to really do a really great job of bringing their point of view in and making sure it's heard equally than maybe the louder voices on the other side. So just want to go there. I appreciate the timeline. I think we can probably be a little bit more aggressive with the timeline of getting this done. I think we've done a lot of work on this already. We've done a lot of public engagement already. I think people are ready for action. So I would ask for a little bit less investment on the public engagement and task force stuff, and really let's just get to it. Like I think we have, there's a place for public engagement and doing it. I know that we have to check some boxes, but we've gotten a lot of that done already. And so I just ask to be a little bit more aggressive with our timeline, and let's, if we can shorten that timeline up, I think our city would be, the community would be appreciative of just us getting down to it. So that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Raff. Councilor Boop.
Yes, I object to that. I think, it's about our forest. the community has to be involved, and bigly, like would say someone like, yeah, bigly. You know, it's very important that the community is involved. And anyway, if you
I'm
don't.
not saying they shouldn't be involved. I'm
No,
saying,
but,
like,
no, it has
go
to.
fast.
No, it shouldn't go fast because fast took us where we are right now. We have to, I think there is no antagonistic view between community and developers. You know, we are all in the same, on the same boat. Developers, they develop houses for us, for the population that are here. We have to be objective. We should not also give a blanket, you know, like a blank check to developers, say, cut the trees. We also cannot tell them not to cut trees because, you know, in order to build the houses, some trees have for me, what is very important is, and Jessica mentioned it, and it was, I hope that people came to the tree summit, the Urban Forest Summit. It was so beautifully done, and they were expert. And I think that's what we need, people who talk from the place of knowledge, not because you want this or that, but folks, specialists, and they were there. And they talk about the things. What we know in our community is climate change is moving very fast. And with it, we have different things. The lady who was here today said, oh, there's a tree next to my house that can fall into those. You cannot ignore those appeal. You can't. You just cannot sit in your house and say, oh, it's fine until the tree fell on that house. But it has, that's why the criterion of clear and objectives are very important. I've seen developers have to make things. I think I sent it to the mayor. I was on the Côte d'Azur. Those are more expensive houses than Lake Oswego. Those are like millions of euros. But people, they build, and on the wall, they build with the tree, to show that developers can make those things. You just cannot come and blanket like you cut all the trees to make a beautiful house or a bigger house. There are ways we can save trees. And in multiple occasions, trees were cut that could have been saved. And that's the problem is that like how can we work together, developers and community members, to make sure that we all work for us, because the trees are important for our livelihood. In the long run, without tree, we will be in a desert of like a concrete jungle with high temperature and all that. The reason Lake Oswego is not that very hot, it's because we have this canopy. So that's one thing. The second, it's very difficult to create a code that satisfies everybody. It will never happen. But we have to come to a way that everybody knows that the neighbor's tree is dead, it's gonna fall into my house, that tree needs to be removed. It's for safety reason, it's the truth. We can't come and defend that. The other thing, defending and preserving the old trees, because there are some trees, if you cut them, no matter what you plant, it will take 200 years to get to that tree. Trees like that should be saved. Like we are saving, there are many historic houses, the Carl House, the other house that are 100 years. If we can have historic trees, that we tell any developer that, hey, this is a historic tree, you gotta give us a real reason to cut this tree. You know, and all that can be done. I know it's easy for me to come here and speak about it, but trees are very dear to me. We have to work. But the most important thing is our forest. People, I said it last time, only the mayor and I were up against when the Lake Oswego Country Club was cutting 78 trees. And I said, where are the people who are advocating for trees? Only the mayor and I. We went there and they cut it because they want to golf. And those are things, for example, that are, for me, it's shameful to do that. But it was, and they had the right because the code give them that right. And that's those loopholes that the tree code should like close so that no one can come and say, oh, every year I can cut 33 or 5 trees or something like that. So I think we should advocate for the forest. You only see Mike Buck, the LO watershed. They're the only folks you see, and the sustainability working. All the rest, they stay. When we want to cut a tree, you start having activists. That also is not okay. Let's work. And the city should have a czar, a tree, like someone that is paid full time. They've been asking, the watershed folks are asking me, and I'm asking my fellow councilors to whatever. I don't care when they say, oh, the budget. Sometimes we pay for other things that are not more important than that. I think we need to have that person. I don't know. Staff may know how many FTE we need, if it's one, if it's, but we need that so that people, that person can come to us and come to the community to work on that. I have a lot to say, but I respect your time, and because this is very serious. That's a very serious thing. And Jessica, thank you for what you're doing outside the community, like this, the summit. You did a great presentation, and I was very proud that you work for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Good comments. Councilor Afghan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director Nomanolu, if the city manager Bennett has not given you that kudo or the recognition that we gave you last city council meeting, you can show up to her office tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. and collect it. Now, you did an awesome job in the Urban Forest Summit, as Councilor Mahbub said. Let me share with you where I come from, and then share with you what I would love to see in the effort you're doing. First of all, everything that you put on the table, they make sense to me, and it's a lot of work, by the way, and I don't know how all of that is going to be accomplished. But I love Lake Oswego environment. I love Lake Oswego ambiance, the green trees, the tree canopies, the seasonal colors. And I want it to be, that's my mission, I want it to be this beautiful forever and the future generations. I also care about sustainability. And as a goal, the city councilors have adopted combating climate change. So all of this is on one side of the scale. And then when I look at the tree replacement requirement that we have, when we cut a 30-inch or 36-inch or 24-inch fir tree and replace it with a 2-inch dogwood tree, that doesn't make sense to me. At some point, it did make sense, and we put it together. Those who were prior to us, that made sense. But I think we got to look at it, and I know this is part of your effort. I want to reemphasize it, that we need to put some equity in this, that the environment needs to see the benefit of that tree that we're going to replace. Now, when I look at the bigger picture, I know that we have code requirements for the developers. They can cut trees where the footprint of the house is, and they can move the footprint in order to get the house in. But whatever tree is in that footprint, they have the right to cut it. I also know that if there's sick tree and dying tree, they also get to be cut. We are okay with it. But what I don't think it's fair is those who are outside of these two groups. And they go through a process. They want to cut a tree. Some have a fear of this tree coming down on their house and injuring them or killing someone. And yet, the process we have says, no, you can't do that. Yet, I know most of the houses in Lake Oswego had cut trees in order to have those houses up. But somebody who has a true fear of the tree coming down, we say, no, you go deal with your mental health, and that's our decision. Yet we don't accept that liability that if that tree come down, who's accountable for it? So I want to provide some flexibility for those who have a legitimate reason to cut a tree. That's the flexibility. But at the same time, with a condition, replacing that tree would have a duration that the environment would have equal or better benefit from the tree replacement. This is an example that if I cut a 30-inch fair tree, in 5 years, that benefit for the environment should equal or be greater than that 30-inch tree. And the reason I'm going there is that every tree has a life expectancy. If we protect every single tree, we know that in the future we're going to have a palm desert looking city if we don't replace them. So this may also provide us an opportunity to replace them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Afghan. Councilor Corrigan.
Number one, we have to get this right. This has been a hot issue in our community for decades. We absolutely have to get it right. So our best shot at this is to follow the work that's been laid out by the Urban Community Forest Plan. It was very carefully vetted by many, many groups. And the only way to do that is with open, transparent, comprehensive public engagement in the way that the plan aligns. And I think your schedule will do that, and I support that. And yes, thank you for coming to the Tree Summit. You really did a great job, and I think a lot of people learned a lot, including me. The last thing I wanted to ask you was, I was kind of surprised to see the fact that the Community Development Code would have amendments too, and I'm wondering if you can give us some kind of an idea about what those might be.
The Community Development Code amendments would focus mainly on our sensitive lands and tree mitigation requirements and tree protection requirements in overlay zones. So like the West Lake Grove Village Center overlay, they have, like, for instance, a requirement that you plant 3-inch caliper trees, which is pretty large. And I'm not sure that that really aligns with best management practices in terms of assuring the long-term viability, the costs associated with that, and also when you're trying to preserve other trees on the site, which particularly Lake Grove Village Center overlay has a lot of standards that basically require or prioritize the retention of large trees on the site, evergreen. But if you have big trees, you have to plant that with big root balls. That becomes hard to do. So looking at things like that, looking at our mitigation ratios in sensitive lands, which we've gotten a lot of feedback are too high. And then looking at our street tree planting requirements is another thing that we want to do, because there are some, like I said, First Edition Forest Hills is great. They require street tree planting if there aren't already existing street trees there for all new single-family dwellings. And that's something that we could look at doing citywide rather than just a few neighborhoods here and there. So those are some examples of the Community Development Code updates that would be included.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Windland.
There's quite a few things I want to go through quickly, but overall, thanks for the report and the setup of the plan. I think it looks fabulous. After going through the urban forestry plan process, I think it gave us a lot of good direction of where we go. I'm I'm fine as we go through this process with getting some of those updates done. I think I agree with you that we don't have to look at wholesale changes that are drastic in either direction, because what we have figured out is our current tree code, while it does not make everyone happy, it almost makes no one happy. And that is sometimes the best policies to have, in the sense that you're kind of in the middle. I think the one big takeaway that I want to be very adamant that we do is clear and objective standards, because if we don't do it, the state will, and they'll just basically take all of our tree code and just neutralize it and take it away. And so we do have to Councilor Corrigan, let's get this right. We have a chance to do it, and let's make sure we do it. I think there's a couple things that I have, we cannot look at this as a focused, just urban forestry plan, and all policy is based on this plan. We've spent thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of hours between the city and everyone else on the housing production strategy. And we just have to make sure that we are in line with the goals with the housing production strategy as well. We can't look at this just as a vacuum. We've had people come and talk to us about solar energy. What happens if we're all about sustainability and renewable resources. The state has basically said that we have to have more solar energy. We know that we're not going to put windmills in Lake Oswego, so solar is our only other part. So how do we account for somebody who wants to take trees down maybe to put solar energy on their house? Another aspect that we have to look at is just like Mountain Park looked at on fire abatement. I think we need to have good policy with that. Other communities around Oregon that are closer to forest fires, and we were close to a forest fire not too long ago, are having insurance companies cancel blanket cancellations for not writing insurance in certain areas. Bend had that happen with several carriers, and Central Oregon. I just want to make sure that we keep some of those aspects in line. I also want to talk about budget. When I add up all your dollar signs on your plan, and I know this is over time, but there's quite a bit. I mean, even if I just ballparked it, there's $1.5 million of budgeted items that need to happen. I would like to know, before we get into the budget cycle, where this money is going to come from and what's the offsets, because I think that's going to be important to help make some of those decisions. And then as far as getting information and feedback, if we do really want feedback, I like kind of like we do the community survey, to get a scientific and valid survey of the broader community on issues that we can agree with, on the questions we want to ask. Because I believe that our advocacy groups, either the builders or the tree advocates, are going to be telling us what they think. And I totally am excited to hear what they have to say. But I think there's a long held belief in Lake Oswego that that they want the city council and city policy to represent everybody. And I think there's sometimes community members that are out there that are not engaged, that care about maybe it's property rights or trees or whatever they want to think about, but we need to make sure that we get input from them. So, and then Jessica, what was the figure that were trees that were taken down from developers, or what was, I think you shared it in the forestry summit, wasn't it? Like 18% of the trees that were removed?
Yeah, between 2020 and 2023, 16% of all tree removed were purely for development purposes. The more than half of the tree removal was for dead, hazard, or invasive trees, which I
Okay.
think represented about 52%, if I recall correctly.
Okay, so I think that just puts into context that I think our tree code is working to a big extent, and that while I say not wholesale changes, we definitely have a lot of fine tuning and some updates that we need to look at and improve upon. I'm all for that, but I do think that we have to recognize that we're the #1 community in Oregon with tree canopy, and we have to recognize that policy that was done back in 1974 is working. So give ourselves a pat on the back a little bit, pat on the back. So that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Wendland. Appreciate the comments. Councilor Burdick.
So first, thank you for all the work. And I really agree with a lot of what my colleagues have said, so I'll do my best not to repeat. But I believe that your list is very comprehensive, and I think it's a good starting point. A few things that I would like to definitely see us focus on, definitely the hazardous trees and the dead trees, along with the invasive. I think that's an area right now that we might be too restrictive, and we need to start really we need to look at that. I don't know what that looks like. I don't want to get into the weeds and micromanage that, but I do think we hear a lot about the concern about those dead trees. And, I think our citizen who came earlier today and kind of commented, what happens? How do we deal with the neighbor who truly has a dead tree and it's not being taken care of? How do other communities deal with that? What does that look like? I'd be very curious to know. I also really believe in the street planting and getting those street trees planted, because the more we can kind of have that cooling effect on our pavement, that has a large impact. So again, we're hitting a lot of different issues that impact our climate change by getting that pavement shaded. So that's something that's very important to me. And I also want to touch a little bit on something that Councilor Wendland mentioned, and that's making sure that we're not looking at things in a pure vacuum, because we want to make sure that we don't have one aspect of our code that's all tree without taking into account other opportunities to have positive impact on our climate and that can reduce greenhouse gases. And that can be very difficult. How do you balance solar versus a tree? I'm not sure. Anything we can do to help things be more clear and objective, I think are going to be good. And I think we need to be forward thinking in terms of where can some of these conflicts come in when they come up. What's our process for looking at them? So it's not a subjective approach, it's more of an objective approach. So anything we could do there, I think would be helpful. And again, I think I agree with what you said. We don't need to throw this in the trash and start over. I think we just need to look at what's working and what's not working, and then start kind of carving out what that looks like. So I think you've got a great plan, and thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Burdick. Yeah, good points. I have a couple specific questions. I'll try to wrap it up here. I think in general, our objective, we just did the housing production strategy, and one of our main goals is to streamline, look at the code a little bit. So as we undertake some of this work here, I think we should keep that in mind, that we're trying to streamline. We don't want to streamline in some areas and make others more complicated. Right. To that end, I know that we, in regards to the housing production strategy, might be looking at the Westlake Grove Design District overlay. And I saw Westlake Grove, listed because of all its peculiarities, which of course is why we're looking at it in regards to housing. And so maybe we see if those two fit together, before we make tree changes to Westlake Grove, if we're going to make other wholesale changes to it. And maybe just that too, areas that have just such particular, standards, even hearing like the street use standard, that it's one way in first edition, which is a good way, but not that way in other things. It's like, well, yeah, it just doesn't make sense. This neighborhood by neighborhood approach. The forest management permit, did we fix that situation?
Not yet. It actually is contained within the recommendations. I don't think it's specifically listed, but yeah. And, you know, the urban forest, to be fair, does include trees that are in a golf course. It includes trees
That's
that
the
are in the middle of a
problem.
parking lot. I mean, these are all part of our urban forest. But yeah, if the intent is to make sure that, that we're really looking at what, I guess, in terms of the minor forest urban management permit, we can kind of change that intent so that it's not just looking at overall canopy cover, but maybe there's other criteria that we can look at. But sorry, the short answer is yes, that is on the list.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Glad to hear that. And the topic, our neighbor Linda, who's been great sitting here the entire time, is that something that we'll be looking at as well when you have, because that issue does come up, people that, you know, have dead trees in a neighboring lot, or is that something that's left to insurance that is kind of outside of our regulatory purview?
So we consider that to be a private matter, and we get that a lot. It is not just this one person in particular. I do feel for it, but it is a bit of a nightmare to have to deal with, for city staff to deal with in any case. I know that the City of Portland may have that program. They have a whole urban forestry department at the City of Portland. So in terms of, you know, if this is something that the council wants us to look into, we can certainly do that. But, you know, it's going to take staff resources and budget because it is not a small item. We do have like a guidance that we give to people in terms of, you know, first talk to your neighbor, you know, and sometimes they can come up with ways to kind of split cost, or we've had people, even when folks, you know, can't afford it, we've had the neighbor who fully paid for the removal. I know that doesn't work every time, but that has happened before. And you know, trying to work those out. When they can't come to an agreement, we offer mediation. We tell them to notify their insurance company and put the neighbor on notice in case anything happens. But you know, I definitely feel for folks who have these sort of hazard and dead trees that are sort of looming over their house. But in terms of bringing the city in to kind of try to address that, and you know, that's going to take some resources.
So yeah, I was going to go that same spot, which is, of course, we can consider a code that makes it illegal to maintain dead trees on your property. Then we need to look at the staffing impacts for code enforcement.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you want us to look at this issue, and I would just remind all of you too that even if we do that, the code enforcement process is not fast. It's not fast.
We know.
Okay, as long as we're all aware that just because we've made something illegal, it doesn't mean that the problem gets solved instantly. It means we get a new process that we get to follow.
Right. No, we know.
But
Yes.
if when like the neighbor, when they come see the city, I think the enforcement is clear. If our guy can, our girl,
But again, it's not fast.
Yeah.
So
Helpful.
because the property owner also has rights that have to be protected in the code enforcement process. Those of you who've been through the code enforcement process know that unless you have a willing property owner, a property owner who wants to come into compliance, then it takes time. And I am not telling you that we can't do it. I'm just telling you that if we do it, I think we need to also consider the resource implications of going that direction. And I also will just remind you that sometimes, and I'm certainly not saying that's true in this circumstance, but sometimes the city ends up in the middle of disputes between neighbors where they really need to be worked out between the neighbors. And so even if something's legal or illegal, it doesn't sometimes resolve the underlying dispute. I know the mayor and I have recently had a chance to work on a different issue where there's just an underlying dispute between the neighbors and whether there's code compliance issues or not. And as I say, I certainly understand and empathize with this neighbor who's got dead trees on the property next to her. So we can definitely look at it, but I think you need to look at what does it mean in terms of staffing city program to make it effective.
That's right. Well, it's a good, I mean, I think, and a lot of things on the list we have to look at. A lot of them are going to take current, you know, budget. I mean, we look at the, you know, the tree inventory to the, we're not using the term czar, but the natural resource manager, which is on the,
urban and community forester.
Urban community forester. And you know, that's a good, and in some ways though, when we look at that, looking at how that position may be able to tie some of, centralize a little bit of this work, because, you know, we do have it, and some of that's going to happen. There's parks doing some, there's planning doing some, there's engineering doing some, public works, and how they could kind of, you know, tie it all together, maybe in a more efficient way than, I don't know. So a good looking at, and to Councilor Verdict's point, and somewhat to, Councilor Afghan, too, is something that didn't really come up during the urban community forest plan, because it was happening like while we were going through the process, is this idea of the, being a little, looking at our parameters around the, diseased trees that aren't yet dead, but are on their way to death. I mean, everything's on its way to death, but, a more immediate, I know, so just a lot of death today. Taking a look at that, what our standards are around removing trees that, because there's so many other factors too. It's, if someone's there and the neighbors, are working together at that moment and they're willing to take it down, and we say, well, it's not quite dead enough yet. And then, 3 years down the road, it's a new neighbor and they don't want to take it down, or they're not willing to pay for it. And then you're back to square one with conflict. And so just keeping those things in mind, again, with mitigation, I think that's the key, that every action we're taking is having some kind of a net benefit. And as the plan outlines in your recommendations, taking this ecosystem approach is critical, and less of this, tree by tree approach, but having a more holistic approach. And Councilor Raff making a good point about we want to be, expedient and efficient with the process, and we already have a very comprehensive list going here, and we don't want to, start cracking the door. Otherwise, the process will never end. We will be in it forever. So we have to be pretty, I think, disciplined and recognize what we heard in the process. Leaving open a little flexibility for, some real world examples that have come up, during this process that would have probably made it on this list. And on the one other item on the clear and objective, front, as we consider, type 2 permits and the landscape rationale or the landscape purpose, for a type 2, just looking at that and how we can address the clear and objective nature of that landscape permit so that we have equitable outcomes between different, permits, I think is probably something that would be good to look at. But there seems like there's so many good specific items identified here. I don't know how much more expedited they're going to make it. But I hear the comments too from Council Women on that task force. So as we work to put that together, make sure that we have good voices, in that room that are really going to be collaborative and can work together and bring different perspectives to the table. That's going to be critical in all of this. But yeah, does that sound good to everyone? This process going forward, really great job laying all this out for us in such a clear way. And there really are good actions here. I mean, the main thing is we do have, we've had this code, our community has valued our urban forest and these natural resources in such a high way that we now do have such a healthy canopy, despite decades of rather intense development all throughout town. Really speaks to the effectiveness of the code. And someone said, there's not going to be one code that everyone says, wow, it's the best code ever. There's always going to be people who want to take down a tree. We don't let them take it down. They're upset. And others who do get to take down trees, and others think they shouldn't be able to take them down. That's always going to be the case. And so making these kind of surgical adjustments to the code just make things, more equitable, understandable, and result in an even healthier forest, in the way to come, and hopefully in a way that is more efficient. Remember, streamline. We're all about streamlining the code. Yeah, I mean, whenever I see these, I think, oh my gosh, are the volumes, that are gonna, the tomes that are gonna come in here, that we're gonna be approving. So hopefully we're gonna tighten it up a little bit, because we want this to be understandable too. It should be clear for the average Joe. Yes, and you guys do such a good job explaining it when it comes in here, but it is like a matrix. Puzzle, and but it's good. So thank you. We'll look forward to. So we'll work together on next steps, putting this group together, and council members, if you know good people to serve on the, let me know. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Hall. You were so quiet the whole time.
I know, you guys didn't even give me a chance.
Great job.
No, appreciate it. Thanks. Look forward to working on this.
All right. Information from council. The court.
The South Shore Fire Station Task Force met again And this time they studied response times with and without the South Shore Fire Station and came to the conclusion that we have to have 4 fire stations in order to meet required response times. So their next task is to study where that best location might be for the Southeast Quadrant Fire Station that we're talking about. They're really using a no stones unturned approach. So that's what's going on.
Wow.
Great
okay.
job, yeah.
Thank you very much. Councilor Booth?
No.
Oh. Well, just a thank you to the Heritage House. They had the Youth Leadership Council over. They have an exhibit on, if you haven't been, on civic engagement, the history of civic engagement in Lake Oswego. It's very well done. And the Youth Council had a good time going through that, and then a good discussion. There's an ongoing, I've talked about this, there's an ongoing conversation between stakeholders in the region and Metro on the supportive housing services, tax program, the future of that. And the region's mayors are really engaged with Metro. There's a series now of additional discussions that are taking place over the next this month and December for the end of the year as they reach a decision point on that program. Again, the cities, the mayors, are leading the idea of a cities fund, a way to share more of the money with cities for projects like we're doing with Clackamas County, but it's not that way in Multnomah and Washington counties. And so that's something that we've been advocating for. And then, of course, there's interests advocating for everything. But looking at what that tax should be and what the rate should be, what the income threshold should be, and the duration of the tax are all things that are on the table. And then, of course, the use and working out the needs of the counties, who are currently expediting this work with, the needs of cities who are also playing a factor, but kind of less directly, right, in the counties. Councilor Rath?
I would like to say congratulations to the 4 of us for continuing another 4 years of working together. So I look forward to the next 4 years of the 4 of us together again. I think it's good to see that even though we didn't really have to do a lot of work, I think the previous 4 years means that we did a decent enough job where no one thought anyone could do any better. So I don't know if that's a good bar to have or a bad one, but I'm looking forward to the next 4 years with you guys.
Likewise.
And January 7th, Martha is putting something big.
Cake?
No, I get to be embarrassed. Great. Oh, what, you mean for your swearing in?
Yes.
Yes. Remember, the 4 of you didn't get sworn in.
Yeah.
I mean, you got sworn in, but it was over Zoom. And so please bring I don't know if it's going to be big, but it'll be nice.
Well,
bring your family.
We're invite people.
Bring your family. Do not plan a long speech, however.
Well,
do not plan a long speech. Like a minute, maybe. Yeah, no, it's 30 minutes total. So the longer you talk, the less time you have to have cake with your friends.
Yes, yeah, but we will have a nice thing at our first meeting in January. And Judge Brown will be here.
Yeah.
Swear us in. Invite your families. We'll invite some community partners.
We'll try to get
Obviously,
Dave
the
Arpin
public.
here to take your picture, so.
Standing room only. We want a pickleball-sized crowd here. Yeah. Maybe that's what we'll do. Say
Yeah, we'll have a pickleball court. We'll put pickleball on the agenda.
Put it right on top. Yeah.
I'm kidding. I'm joking. We will not. We will not.
Oh, yes, we did also have
The progress tour. Like we had the progress
LORAC,
tour
he's talking about the
at the LORAC. Beautiful. I am very impressed by, what Lake Oswego is offering. I think many gyms will be scared when we are done.
Can't wait to use that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And people are asking me if they work here, if they can be members.
If they work for the city, they can get the in-city rate.
But if they have a business.
No, if they don't live here.
Oh, okay.
So
only
I
city.
think I'll have to double check with Ivan. When we're here on master fees and charges at the next meeting, you ask that question at that time, and you'll get a more accurate. But I don't believe so. I think it's only residents.
Resident. Good.
Yeah, I have two things. First, I just want to give a huge shout out to the street department. I don't know if you've noticed, but all the leaves have come down at the same time this year. And they are running 3 street sweepers a day, and they're going to deal with a cyclone event tonight, apparently. So I just want to say thank you publicly to them. It's actually quite a dreadful job if you think about it. They're staring at the curb for 8 hours a day in a giant machine, and they're doing it 7 days a week. So thank you so much, street crew. And then just quickly, a reminder that next Thursday and Friday, city offices, the library are closed in observance of Thanksgiving. So some jurisdictions don't close on Friday, but we do. All right, that's all I got.
Great, okay. Oh, yes, the community tree on Friday. We will
Yeah,
be there.
except for the Parks Department, the Fire Department, the Police Department, and the street crew. They all work on Friday to support the tree
Everyone
lighting.
come out. Everyone come out Friday if you're around. Come down to the tree line. We'll all be there with our chamber friends. Okay. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you coming to the tree? Oh, yeah. Trudy, are you going to be there? What? You